Our standard history of human liberty usually begins here, with 18th century documents and the rise of democratic ideals in the West. But many of these same principles were operating thousands of years earlier and thousands of miles to the east. To see them, we have to look past the modern label of liberalism and focus on its three core components: political limits, social individualism, and economic freedom. Tracing these pillars in ancient India places the origins of these ideas in a context far removed from the European Enlightenment. In the political sphere, the Lichavi Republic emerged around 600 BCE. Instead of a king, a supreme assembly of leaders held collective sovereignty. These republics, known as Gana Sanghas, used systems that mirror modern parliamentary procedures. They elected accountable executives, assigned whips to manage a quorum, and used colored sticks to conduct secret ballots. These structures were grounded in a concept called Matsya Nyaya, or the law of the fish. Thinkers argued that without a state, the strong would simply devour the weak, justifying government as a tool to protect individual safety. Even in monarchies, the king's power was constrained by Raja Dharma. A ruler was not absolute, but was legally and morally bound by a higher order of righteousness and duty. The Arthashastra, an ancient text on statecraft, explicitly states that a king's benefit is found only in the happiness of his subjects. A ruler's personal desires were secondary to the welfare of the people. Distributing power across an assembly and legally subordinating the ruler to the welfare of the governed are indigenous features of ancient Indian political life. The political framework was supported by an emphasis on individual autonomy. The Upanishads shifted focus away from state-sanctioned rituals and toward the personal discovery of the inner self. By the 6th century BCE, the Shramana movement rejected priestly authority entirely. Leaders like the Buddha encouraged individuals to verify truth through their own reason and experience, rather than accepting tradition. The Charvaka school pushed this into radical materialism. They rejected the supernatural and the afterlife, arguing that sensory perception was the only valid source of knowledge, and that individual well-being in the present world was the only logical goal. Emperor Ashoka codified religious neutrality on rock pillars across his empire, allowing diverse sects to flourish under a civil ethic. The inscriptions mandate restraint in speech, warning that condemning another's religion out of excessive devotion only harms your own faith. This environment allowed individual reason and intellectual pluralism to take root, creating spaces where institutional control was openly questioned. This autonomy reached the material economy through the Shreni, self-governing economic corporations that operated with minimal state interference. These guilds minted their own coins, maintained private militias for protection, and held the legal authority to adjudicate disputes among their members. In early Vedic society, we find surprising egalitarian openings. Women like Gargi and Maitreyi were recognized scholars who engaged in sophisticated metaphysical debates in royal assemblies. Legal frameworks also recognized Stridhan, or woman's property. This granted women the right to inherit assets and the power to own or sell property acquired through their own efforts. Autonomous economic guilds and early legal protections for women represent tangible applications of liberal principles in daily ancient life. This trajectory of ancient liberty was not permanent. Around 500 BCE, the social landscape began to tighten dramatically. New legal codes like the Manusmriti enforced absolute patriarchal dependence, lowering the marriage age for girls and progressively denying them formal education. Simultaneously, the social structure calcified into a rigid, hereditary caste system that suspended the social mobility of earlier eras. These structural inequalities mean that ancient Indian society ultimately failed the modern standard of universal rights. Despite those social failures, the ancient Indian civilization developed sophisticated frameworks for political accountability and intellectual freedom that lasted for centuries. We often view assemblies, materialist philosophical skepticism, and the rule of law as exclusive inventions of the West. But the hunger for pluralism, skepticism, and limited power was lived and debated in the East long before the Enlightenment. These ideas are a shared human heritage.